Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. Pakistan says India is being run on the principles of terrorism, racism and xenophobia under the sham garb of democracy. In Pakistan's first right for reply, UN Representative Zulkarnain China rebutted New Delhi's response to Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech at the UN General Assembly. China said the accusations of terrorism are rich coming from a country whose spy was caught in Pakistan and confessed to terrorism and espionage. He said India claimed that Article 370 was revoked for development of Kashmir, but the valley is facing a clampdown for the last 2 months. China questioned why India is afraid of letting Kashmiris speaking their minds and let the world know about their plight.
A country which is in the iron grip of the fascist RSS, which was thrice banned in India for terror-related charges, has the audacity to point fingers towards others.
He also said India does not have the moral courage to respond to the UN's report on human rights abuses in the occupied valley. Moreover, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech is being celebrated in the Indian Occupied Kashmir. Kashmiris defied New Delhi's lockdown with firecrackers, cheering and chanting slogans after Khan advocated for their cause at the UN General Assembly. The speech convinced Kashmiris that they are not alone and abandoned by the world. The people of Indian Occupied Valley were overjoyed that their voice was heard at the highest international forum. Indian activist Shaila Rashid said there were rallies, firecrackers and celebrations after Imran Khan's speech at the UN. On Twitter, Kashmiris living abroad confirmed the reports, saying Khan has given the caged people of the valley a reason to smile. New Delhi imposed crushing curfew and communications blackout that has entered its 56th consecutive day. On the other hand, with no trade deal and no diplomatic win on Kashmir issue, Indian media has slammed Prime Minister Narendra Modi for failing US visit. In a report, Indian media outlet The Print wrote that despite pomp and propaganda, Modi didn't achieve anything in New York. The report said Indian Prime Minister scored clear nil on the most contentious trade issue during his week-long America visit. Mentioning occupied Kashmir, the report said Modi couldn't extract much from Trump, who kept on repeating his offer of mediation in Kashmir. He said even Washington has called on New Delhi to rapidly ease restrictions in Indian occupied Kashmir. The report said despite India's rhetoric, President Donald Trump has termed Iran a bigger terrorism threat than Pakistan. It mentioned that Trump asked Modi to meet Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan. Over 1 million votes have so far been counted after polling in Afghanistan's presidential election. Observers say the elections were marred by low turnout, violence, and technical glitches and voter fraud. The Afghan Defense Ministry says 5 security personnel were killed and 37 civilians were wounded in 68 attacks during Saturday's presidential polls. Details in this report.
Millions of Afghans went to the polls to elect the war-torn country's new leader. The election was postponed twice due to peace talks between the Taliban and the US in Doha. More than 70,000 security personnel were deployed across the country to counter the Taliban, who had threatened to target polling stations. This was the 4th presidential election in Afghanistan since 2001. Voters hope the election will bring peace to the country after decades of conflict.
All the Afghan people, including myself, long for real peace to be realized in our country. I am full of expectations of my candidate. I believe he has got great plans for pushing forward the peace process and bringing peace back to this nation.
Some voters say the new president should focus on education and infrastructure development.
For the future leader, become a good country, a developed country, and should bring the peace for us. For those that there are more educations, more constructions. Yeah, this is our expectation from our coming leaders.
18 candidates, including President Ashraf Ghani and Chief Executive Abdullah Abdullah, are vying for the top slot. The Election Commission of Afghanistan is expected to announce the results in 3 weeks.
For more on this, we are joined by Hamdullah Hamdard, a Kabul-based political analyst. Thank you, Mr. Hamdard, for your time. First of all, independent observers say that the Afghan presidential election was marred by low turnout, violence, technical glitches and voter fraud. Doesn't these allegations damage the credibility of the whole electoral process?
Well, first of all, as one of the voters that I went to the polling stations, I voted, the biometric was used and I didn't see any fraud. And I guess these allegations are baseless, and usually such allegations are from the people who consider themselves as independent, but they're not independent. They are representing someone, especially the ones who will fail and who will lose the elections. I guess the technical glitches, there were some small glitches. These small technical glitches cannot damage the credibility of the elections considerably.
Mr. Hamdard, what about peace in post-election Afghanistan, as peace dialogue between the US and Taliban stopped and the insurgents announced more attacks?
One of the most important statements that Dr. Ghani was giving in his campaigns, that was about the peace and restarting the peace negotiations with the Taliban. Of course, there will be some conditions, and Taliban will have to show some flexibility, reduce the violence, and stop escalating the violence in the country. Plus, the US will get Taliban to the negotiating table with the Afghan government, with the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, because this peace process will have to be led on by the Afghan government in the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan.
Mr. Hamdullah Hamdard, thank you for your time for Indus News. Now moving on to Hong Kong, where police have fired tear gas and pepper spray to break up protesters in a busy shopping district. Heavy contingents of police were deployed after a night of violence. Police arrested several protesters after they started staging demonstrations from Causeway Bay to Admiralty. Earlier, police issued a tear gas warning for pedestrians after clashes in Admiralty yesterday. An online group, Stand with Hong Kong, called for demonstrations in at least 72 cities across the world. Today's rally marks the 17th consecutive weekend of anti-government protests since June. Israeli security forces have detained 8 Palestinians in early morning raids in southern West Bank. Palestinian officials said Israeli soldiers detained 6 men during a raid in Dura town. They said the forces also detained 2 men, including a teenager, in Idna town. Meanwhile, Israeli soldiers removed by force several Palestinians and international activists holding a non-violent sit-in near the shore of northern Dead Sea. The activists were protesting against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's pledge to annex the West Bank. Palestinian officials said several people were injured during that raid. Austrians are voting today in snap parliamentary elections following the collapse of the coalition government in May. Opinion polls show former Chancellor Sebastian Kurz's People's Party is far ahead by roughly 1/3 of the vote. But Kurz still needs a coalition partner to secure the majority, and it remains unclear whom he will pick. Kurz's election campaign focused on a Judeo-Christian identity. The country is currently being governed by a non-partisan caretaker government of technocrats. Coalition with the far-right Freedom Party fell apart after a video sting scandal. The scandal was labeled Ibizagate after the Spanish island where the video was recorded. Brexit party leader Nigel Farage says he will run for a seat in Britain's parliament in any upcoming election. Farage's party won the EU parliamentary elections in May. The UK has landed in a deadlock over the Brexit with the European Union after heated debates in its parliament. An impasse continues. A new election is widely expected before the end of this year. An anti-Islamophobia event in the southern German city of Ulm was the scene of a violent attack by a knife-wielding individual. The event was organized by one of the largest Muslim NGOs of Germany, IGMG. Event organizers said a man shouted, "I will kill you Muslims," in English and tried to attack women taking part in the event with a knife. They added no one got hurt in the incident. Organizers said police have taken the attacker into custody and started an investigation. Syria has demanded immediate withdrawal of the US and Turkish troops from the country. The United States has around 1,000 troops tackling ISIS militants in Syria. Addressing the UN General Assembly, Foreign Minister Walid al-Muallim said Syria has the right to take action if the US and Turkey refuse to withdraw troops. Washington and Ankara have started joint land and air patrols along a part of Syria's border with Turkey to establish a safe zone. Al-Muallim said there should be no deadlines for a UN-mediated constitution committee formed to find a settlement to the civil war. He said Syrian people should lead and own the process. Clashes between the government forces and pro-democracy protesters led Syria into civil war in 2011. Sudan's new Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok has urged the US to remove Khartoum from its list of states sponsoring terrorism. Speaking at the UN General Assembly, he said Sudan is entering a new phase after the toppling of dictator Omar al-Bashir in April. Hamdok said sanctions imposed by Washington are causing tremendous suffering to the Sudanese people. He assured the General Assembly that New Sudan is not a threat to any nation. Sudan was designated a state sponsor of terrorism in 1993 under the then US President Bill Clinton. The designation makes the country ineligible for debt relief and funding from international institutions, also limiting foreign investment. It's time for a short break, but coming up next in the bulletin. New chocolate line consists of 100% cacao. And cities across China light up to mark National Day. Welcome back. Sad and unfortunate incident in China. 36 people have been killed and several others injured after a bus crashed into a truck. The bus was carrying 69 people when the accident happened on an expressway in Jiangsu province. Police said the bus broke through the barrier dividing the two lanes on a motorway. They said an initial investigation suggests the accident was caused by a burst tire. Among the 36 injured, 9 have been declared critical and rushed to the hospital. 44 people have been killed in a flooding following torrential rains in India's northern Uttar Pradesh state. Officials say thousands others have moved to the relief camps in view of more heavy rains predicted for next 48 hours. Densely populated regions on the banks of the state's two main rivers were worst hit. Officials said most people lost their lives in incidents of house collapse, drowning, lightning and snake bites. Earlier this week, flash floods killed at least 17 people in western India's Maharashtra state. 2 people have been killed after a roller coaster carriage derailed in Mexico City. Officials say 5 others were injured in the accident at a popular amusement park. According to an eyewitness, the victims fell to the ground when the last carriage came off the tracks. The popular park was closed soon after the incident. Authorities are now investigating the cause of the accident. The UN's refugee agency says a boat carrying over 50 migrants has capsized off the coast of Libya in the Mediterranean Sea. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees said a rescue operation is underway to save the refugees. Meanwhile, Alarm Phone and independent support groups said another boat carrying nearly 60 migrants went missing in the same area. They said the migrants were hoping to cross the Mediterranean Sea to reach Europe. Last week, EU partnered with the Coast Guard and other Libyan forces to stop the dangerous sea crossings. Zimbabwe's founding leader, Robert Mugabe, has been buried in his home village of Kutama. He died in a Singapore hospital on 6th of September at the age of 95. In the 1970s, Mugabe led a 7-year rebellion against the white minority government in former Rhodesia. He then served as the founding Prime Minister of Zimbabwe from 1980 to 1987. Mugabe tightened his grip on power, ruling as president for 30 years. He was overthrown by the military in 2017. In Turkey, women's rights activists have taken to the streets in Istanbul against the government's failure to stop rising violence against women. The protest started after the murder of Emin Bulut by her former husband last month. Protest organizers said the killing of women has spiked over the last few months. According to a rights group, 294 women were murdered in Turkey in the first 8 months of this year. 440 women were killed last year. Turkey has ratified the Council of Europe's 2011 Istanbul Convention on Preventing Domestic Violence. The famed San Francisco chocolatier Barry Callebaut has created a new way of making chocolate using not just the beans but the whole cocoa fruit. His company says its new chocolate trend is tastier, nutritious and fruitier. More in this report.
Chefs at world's largest cocoa producers, Barry Callebaut, love creating delicious chocolates that not only delight the eye, but also the palate. In the modern age, consumers want to use whole grains, less sugar, more nutrients, and cause less harm to the environment. The chocolatier unveiled a new chocolate line called Whole Fruit Chocolate that packs in cocoa beans and also parts of the fruit tossed away earlier. The Callebaut CEO, Antonio Decent, said 70% of cacao fruit is discarded as waste while making chocolate.
The sugar comes from the fruit, from the pulp of the fruit. The structure comes with the fibers. The taste comes, of course, from the cocoa beans. So it's a chocolate that's made only 100% from the fruit itself.
Pour savoir ce qu'on pouvait en faire.
The new chocolate line will come in 2 types, one consisting of 100% cacao and another mixing in milk with no refined sugar added.
I'm a dark chocolate person, and I think this went 100 times more than a regular.
Decent said the company is looking forward to offering new recipes to Nestle, Hershey and Unilever.
Famous landmarks and buildings have been decked with lights across China. This is to mark the upcoming 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic on 1st of October. In Beijing, the National Stadium, the National Aquatic Center and the Great Wall were lit up with slogans and images. The city of Harbin in northeast Heilongjiang province also put up a spectacular light show. In Tianjin, streets and buildings along the river bank were decorated with colorful lights for the National Day. In Jinan City, capital of eastern Shandong province, 923 buildings were lit up by the LED lights. The Potala Palace in Lhasa city was majestic as striking beams of light illuminated the centuries-old fortress on top of the Red Hill. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.